The players are sitting down, about ready to go. Let's go ahead and code over to the top 8 area. And see who takes it down between Dylan Ham on Grixis Shadow versus his opponent playing Murktide.
Okay, the Gigantha side, yeah, that's going to be Dylan Ham on the Shadow. And Balonic gets it started with this Mishra's Bauble. Looks like a bauble on top for Ham.
Yeah, and Gabriel does that on the upkeep to see the draw, but also to insulate him a little bit from a turn 1 Thoughtseize. So both players going to draw here for Bauble. And Gabriel's turn 2. Let's see if he has any pressure to put down. All right, Island and another Bauble. We're going to say go.
Okay. Normally in a matchup like this, you see a flurry on the early turns. There's a lot of 1-mana creatures and 1-mana interaction, but a slow start from both players.
All right, heads up play from Dylan Ham. He says, I'll move to my draw step. And Gabriel says, no. I'm going to look at your top card on your upkeep. Dylan says, okay. And then after the look, decides to fetch. That prevents any information leak. Now, Gabriel doesn't know the top card of the deck instead of knowing. Fetch a Steam Vents, going to go to 17. Obviously doesn't mind taking damage since we are playing Death Shadow. Okay. Draw for turn. And now Gabriel, remember, does have a Mishra's Bauble in the bank. Let's make sure that, or let's see if he remembers it. That's a nice MF Doom shirt for my man on the right, Dylan Ham. I got to root for him now. Dude, Doom is, well, rest in peace to MF Doom, man.
2 turns in, and Todd's already jumping ship.
Well, I don't think he's going to win, but I'm rooting for him. There's a big difference. Head versus heart, baby.
Still no turn 2 play from Dylan Ham, so...
Yeah, both sitting on their hands, just kind of playing defense, waiting on the other to play a creature first so they can kill it.
Now, I do think that generally helps the deck with a more card advantage, which is Ham, but letting both players make a lot of land drops really helps out Balonic's counter spells.
Ooh, one of the first new cards from Phyrexia that we've seen today. That's Minor Misstep, taking care of the Dragon Rage Channeler for just 1 mana, preventing all of the potential surveils that could come from it.
Notably, 3 copies of Minor Misstep in Balonic's list, so a card he believes in.
Yeah, I mean, he's 502 in the Swiss, so can't be that bad. Back Dylan Ham's way. 4 mana up for Gabriel. Ledger Shredders to cast for Ham. Let's see what the reaction is. Has Snapcaster Mage. All right. Dylan Ham plays a Ragavan. That's going to get a Connive from the Shredder. Let's see what we pitch.
See another Minor Misstep in Balonic's hand.
Yep. Has the ability to go Snapcaster Misstep if he wants to put a creature on the table, but that looks pretty bad in the face of the Ledger Shredder. Let's get a white +1/+1 counter dice on the Ledger Shredder when we get a moment from the spotter. That'll be shortly. But the Minor Misstep takes care of the Ragavan.
I want to leave that Snapcaster Mage to potentially flash something back that is more powerful.
All right, cast Expressive Iteration. Now, has some incentive here to trigger the Connive. Finds a Ragavan. And we'll cast that. Triggering Connive again, more than likely. Dylan going to fetch in response, so thinning the deck slightly. A lot of little micro plays that Dylan's making that leads me to believe that he is on top of his game today. Finds a Blood Crypt. My guess, Fatal Push at the end of turn for the Ragavan. May want to use a red removal spell on it and just fetching extra black mana for later since he does have Steam Vents and Mountain in play. Connive is discarding a land. And heats the Ragavan EOT.
Okay. Yeah, things looking pretty good for Ham here. He's kept up on mana. He's the one with a threat. His life total is down low enough to start casting shadows if he wants to, but not low enough that he has to be super worried about dying quickly. Interesting that Ham is willing to play this shadow here, because normally you do want to wait until they're at least a 4/4 and outside of lightning bolt range.
Yeah, but Ham might be wanting to do some chip damage here. Also, maybe not really afraid of the shadow dying, because I'm pretty sure he has Underworld Breach in hand. So the bigger the graveyard is, the better.
Underworld Breach, good magic card.
Yeah.
Surprised more people don't put it into their decks.
Yeah. Gabriel here fetches an island. This signifies to me that this is about to be a big turn. Usually when people start with a fetch land at the beginning of their turn, that means they're planning on using all their mana for the turn, and they want to make sure that it's all accessible without any sort of potential interruption. Fetch lands are weird because they do put a trigger on the stack. Sometimes your opponent can get you in weird ways. I've been dealing clicked my opponent in response to their fetch land before and just obliterated their whole turn because of it, you know?
Yep.
Here's an Unholy Heat that's going to take out the Ledger Shredder.
Okay.
Has Snapcaster Mage, can go Snapcaster plus Unholy Heat on the Death Shadow. It's currently just a 1/1.
And 2 copies of Snapcaster Mage in Bolonic's list too, so not exactly a stock list here for Gabriel, but it working out very well here. The Snapcaster looks excellent.
All right, here's Snapcaster. It's going to get eaten by Drown in the Lock, except we have Counter Spell. Counter Spell is going to take care of Drown in the Lock. Just mountain at the ready for Dylan. Thoughtseize is still on the stack. We're going to go for an Unholy Heat on the Death Shadow while the shields are down.
Yep.
All right, Shadow dead.
That heat should be exiled.
Yep, but the Thoughtseize is going to take care of the Murktide Regent.
And if Ham's last card is indeed a Underworld Breach, this needs to be a counter spell for Bolonic, or that breach is going to be busted. Yeah, Ham's fanning out his graveyard like, I'm ready to get in there.
And you know it's just going to be a bunch of threats too, right? Couple card draw effects, but like you can go Breach plus Shadow plus Ragavan, maybe a Bobble in there somewhere too.
And there's a Bolt on the Snapcaster. Yeah, that is a Breach. I think that was a second one.
I think he peeled a second Breach too, yeah. All right, going to leave open black for the Death Shadow and then red for the Ragavan. We're going to be able to eat most of the graveyard for value. Honestly, Ham might have broken it. This Shadow deck looks great. This is only the second time we've seen it on camera today.
I told you as long as he could dodge a Murktide Regent, he was able to Thoughtseize it in this game, and now the Breach is taking over after they've just traded resources a bunch in the first 6 or 7 turns.
Yeah, I think maybe Gabriel got a little greedy not casting it. The longer you hold it, the more likely it is to get hit by a Thoughtseize. And he was playing really defensive with Counterspell and Snapcaster Mage. I think last turn, or the turn before last, instead of holding up Snapcaster, could have gone Murktide with, you know, Counterspell backup against a 1/1 Death Shadow. I think that would have been fine.
And Ham here are going to go for a Dragon's Rage Channeler and then a Death Shadow. The DRC is going to help him loop baubles more often, but I think he's 1 card short of getting a second bauble. Instead, decides he likes what he sees on top. So this Underworld Breach, just a rebind Death Shadow, Dragon's Rage Channeler, and draws a card off ball.
Yeah, that's it.
Just a 3-for-1.
Just good.
And Bolonic flooding a bit here, and that is not going to be good when Ham is flush with resources.
All right, starting the turn off here with Expressive Iteration, with Bolonic just passing the turn. Dylan smells blood. He's going for the kill.
Yeah, binned an iteration off of the Surveil. Says, I want to find a way to end this game right now.
Finds a fetch land so he can fetch down to 7. That's going to make the Death Shadow pretty large.
Yeah,
and dash a Ragavan.
The fetch, I believe, will also re-up on Delirium. Is that?
All right, sorcery.
Oh no, we have sorcery, enchantment, artifact, instant. So we're already delirious on the DRC.
Now, Dylan might not want to fetch before damage, might want to protect his life total a little bit, but deciding to go ahead and take 3, this is going to make Death Shadow into a 6/6, I believe. So still, okay, no, it's just going to be a 4/4. I guess there's not a lot of difference between 6/6 and 4/4. Both still died on Holy Heat, but you keep your life total high enough so you don't get, you know, hit with 1 Dash Ragavan and 2 bolts.
I believe I see the 1 Terminate in Ham's hand as well here. So even a Murktide Regent, yeah, that's a plane shift Terminate.
All right, well, probably going to be game over here in a turn or 2, but we'll see if Gabriel can battle back. His demeanor leads me to believe that he has nothing. So.
Here's 2 more threats. Okay, and Ham overwhelms Bolonic. A little bit of flood there from Gabriel, but the Underworld Breach doing the heavy lifting in game 1.
Yeah.
And now Ham gets to bring in those extra Terminates to be even better prepared to answer a Murktide Regent.
Yeah, well sequenced there from Ham, you know, just being able to not only, you know, trade 1-for-1 early, but was able to squeak in a Thoughtseize in a weird spot that took the 1 Murktide Regent, and then you just see the strength of Underworld Breach in a late game, right?
You just exhaust your opponent's resources with all your cheap disruption and your cheap threats, and then once both players are on nothing, you say, oh, actually, I've got 1 more thing. And it turns out it's 3 things.
All right, I think I just figured something out, though. Check this out. So you said he was 1 short on the Underworld Breach, right?
Yeah.
So what happens if he bobbles before Shadow? then he can do both.
Yeah.
Small misstep from my man. I'm going to have to go talk to him after the match.
Could have gotten an extra card.
Yeah.
Well,
sometimes it makes all the difference, you know?
Yeah, and it's easy to get caught up in autopiloting. I know I'm going to get the shadow. Why don't I get this out of the way? It sort of helps simplify when you have this big graveyard, but really want to think things over before you start taking any actions because, those small differences can make the difference. So, going to sideboards here, Dillingham has the Gigantha Companion, 2 Unmoored Ego, the 2 Terminates I mentioned earlier, 3 copies of Spell Pierce, 1 Unlicensed Hearse, 2 Engineered Explosives, 2 Dress Down, 1 Alpine Moon, and a basic Island. I do think we will see the basic Island come in since this is a Blood Moon matchup. Notably, that
brain genius, dude. Holy.
Yeah, notably our players, you can see them with the deck list on the table there. Our top 8 is open deck list. The Swiss was closed, so Dillingham going to know everything that is potentially coming from Bolonic sideboard and vice versa. So I think we'll see the 2 Terminates. I think we'll see the basic Island. I think we might see the Unlicensed Hearse. Pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I like anything else. Engineering Explosives can be okay, but you have creatures of the same type. It's a little bit of a mirror match in that. So the symmetry of the explosives is pretty bad. And Dress Down doesn't do enough. So just some minor changes here. Dillingham, I think, looks pretty good with his main deck. Gabriel Bolonic, the Izzet Murktide player, has 1 Fury, 1 Subtlety, 2 Mystical Dispute, 1 Abrade, 2 Spell Pierce, 2 Unlicensed Hearse, 2 Engineered Explosives, 2 Blood Moon, and 2 Dress Down. I think we'll see the Blood Moons, especially on the play. Could potentially see them be brought out on the draw.
You know how earlier we watched Territorial Kavu get obliterated by a Dress Down? In my brain for a second, I was like, oh, wait, how does that work with Shadow? I'm like, oh, I remember. I watched a Sparring Spike deal 26 damage to people with 2 deck Shadows with Dress Down all the time. I don't think that one's coming in.
I think we will see the 2 Unlicensed Hearses come in to contain these Underworld Breaches.
Yes.
I also think we'll see the 1 Abrade come in, even though there's only 1 Hearse. I think that's I think
it still kills Ragavan and DRC. It's just a generic removal most of the time. Yeah. Abrade's just like a cool card.
You can downgrade a Lightning Bolt in order to give yourself an out to a key sideboard card from your opponent. More interestingly, do you like either of these pitch elementals, the Fury and the Subtlety?
So from the creativity, or not, from the Izzet Murktide side of things, I don't think they really shore up your weaknesses. The Fury specifically, right? You're not really going to pitch it early, and so then is it worth it at 5? Sometimes you get to kill DRC Ragavan. Maybe. We watched it be very good against that combination of creatures all day. Now, if you're on the draw, I think it maybe comes in because they can have those double creature starts that are just impossible to keep up with sometimes. And if the Death Shadow is small, you can still get some combo kills with 2 creatures. So I think Fury might come in. I don't think Subtlety is very good in general. I think it's almost always just going to be a card you need against opposing Murktide decks or opposing Primeval Titan decks.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I too would much prefer the Fury over the Subtlety, but I'm not sold on either one.
All right, both players taking their time a little bit here in sideboarding, but that is common when it is open deck list. Both players get ample time to study opponent's decks, make the best decisions they can possibly make. Now, I want to point out something I just saw. So, the Murktide player, I believe, cut all of their Dragon Rage channelers. What do you think about that?
I think it's pretty reasonable. It's not. This is a matchup that I think is going to be about card advantage and about hard to answer threats.
Okay.
And Dragon's Rage Channeler is card selection and an easy to answer threat.
You can also just kind of ignore it for a while.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
And
it has to attack, so you can't control your opponent's life total with the Death Shadow. Okay. All right. I'm in. Makes sense.
Yeah, and it's such a tactical matchup. Limiting your options by saying no, this has to attack. This has to attack. Not ideal. This is also, an opposing Shredder matchup, and in Shredder mirrors, Shredder tends to be very good because both decks are triggering it a lot.
Yeah.
And if it ever gets to a 3/5, DRC becomes a huge liability.
I would never cut it from the Shadow side of things because it fuels your Underworld Breach so well, and I think that you have to take the aggressive slant to kill your opponent before Murktide dominates. But I do agree that DRC does look a little awkward in the face of a 2/4 or 3/5 Ledger Shredder. And Ledger Shredder is relatively difficult to kill sometimes.
Yeah, looking at Bolonic's deck list, actually, Bolonic has 0 copies of Ledger Shredder. They're going
Oh,
hard
wow, okay.
because of these Snapcasters.
Snapcaster Mage and all the minor missteps. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
So that they're more creature light. You basically see 13 to 15 creatures in Izzet Murktide. They're on the 13 side, and because 2 of them are Snapcaster, yeah, no room for any Ledger Shredders. That I think is advantage Ham, because when you're playing expressive iterations and considers and all this cheap disruption, Ledger Shredder is a card that is going to connive a lot. It's going to quickly get out of lightning bolt range, and now you're required to get a heat. There's actually only 3 copies of heat in Bolonic's list. He went for 4 bolts, in his 7 removal spell package.
Okay. Yeah, there's been some contention. I think when you're playing Underworld Breach, you want to lean on Bolt, and when you're not playing Breach, you do the other way, because the Unholy Heat just answers more things. But, Gabriel looks like, they know what they're doing. I'm sure they heavily considered that slot, heavily. It is one of the more contentious slots.
And then just taking a more aggressive posture. Bolt can also play better with Snapcaster Mage if you're trying to close games quickly.
Yep.
And here we see Bolonic on the play with a Ragavan, though that's an Unholy Heat off the top from Ham. So at least one possible answer there for the pesky monkey.
All right, we're going to main phase this fetch. Probably going to play something to kill it. It is rare and often incorrect to play a creature to try to block a Ragavan. Red decks are traditionally very good at killing blockers, especially the ones that cost 1 mana. So if you ever try to block a Ragavan instead of killing it, you're messing up.
And with all those minor missteps and spell pierces in Bolonic's list, Ham main faces the Unholy Heat, says, show me a second monkey if you got it. Bolonic does not.
All right. Ham's going to turn 2, play Dragon Rage Channeler. Unclear if he has a second land or not. Has yet to play it. But Gabriel going to fetch in response to see if he wants to answer this Dragon Rage Channeler. Curious if it's Counterspell. Maybe it's Consider, looking for a red source. Maybe just Mental Misstep, hold up red.
It's a Consider.
All right. Ben's Spirebluff Canal.
I think that was an iteration. And yeah, the DRC resolves. There's a Thoughtseize. Going to get a Surveil off that.
All right. Surveil resolves first. Going to bend a mountain. See what Gabriel's got in hand. We got Otawara, 2 Expressive Iteration, 2 Murktide. Relatively insulated from Thoughtseize. You cannot strip them of any particular tool.
That is a great hand against Thoughtseize, the old 2-pair land kicker.
Yeah. Takes Expressive Iteration. That's interesting considering I doubt he has 2 answers to Murktide in hand.
Oh, there's 6 cards in the graveyard. Not a lot of instants and sorceries, so the second Murktide not really looking all that powerful.
Well, you just add another one. It's still sure, but it's gonna get there, and you have to kill it eventually.
But the iteration is that source of card advantage, and that's the axis that Ham is playing these games on. That's how he won game 1, whittle down the resources, and win with a breach. Looks like that's how he's trying to play this second game as well.
All right, gonna go ahead and play a Murktide, delving 5. 2 counter is gonna be on. It's gonna be a 5/5. Still loose to another Unholy Heat if there is a 4th card type put into the graveyard. Currently short delirium by 1.
And there was a Hearse drawn from Bolonic. This looks like an Upkeep Terminate.
Yeah, Upkeep Terminate with a Surveil. Nice play from Ham. No Spell Pierce or similar from Gabriel. I don't think he's playing Spell Pierce in the list, right? He's supplanted those with
I think he's
minor
got
missteps?
2. I think he's got
that
3
is a lot
missteps
of
and 2
1-mana
pierces. Oh, there's 3 missteps and 2 snares.
2 snare.
So no
okay.
pierce.
So yes, misstep to cover the 1s and 0s, snare to cover the 2s, complementary package. Not very good against creativity though, but maybe is not that scared of it.
There is a Shadow.
Wow.
Is that just a 3/3?
It is. So a bolt off the top can handle it, but it also killed the DRC, so I think it's important to just put pressure down.
Bolt also needs to come along with a red source, because Bolonic didn't have another land in hand unless he drew it for turn.
Well, we could have a lightning quick game.
Hand should be another Murktide, the unlicensed Hearse he drew on the previous turn, and an unknown, because after this iteration got cast.
Yeah. I see the fetch land.
Yeah, there's definitely a fetch off of this iteration, and that's what's going to get exiled.
Has a bobble too, so it can play the Murktide this turn. Nice.
Yeah, going to be a 4/4 Murktide Regent. So just big enough to stop the DRC and the Shadow. And yeah, if there's no second answer here from Ham, that could be very awkward. Could just lose the DRC for nothing. But, you know, he pretty confidently took the iteration with the Thoughtseize. But maybe this is taking him by surprise. Ooh. Bolonic goes for the Hearse instead. Despite the 2 creatures that he is staring down, the Hearse will take Ham off of Delirium almost assuredly.
Well,
But
we'll see.
yeah.
Starting with iteration means the graveyard can get full pretty quick. We'll see what Ham wants to dig for. My guess, he wants like fetch land. Ooh, I thought he might want that Thoughtseize, huh?
He left up the Steam Vents, might not have another land.
Ah, okay. Smart. Okay, finds Darcy number 2. Now, that one is a little awkward against the Hearse if Bolonic is able to keep him off of Delirium, but it might be relatively difficult.
I see 2 sorceries.
Just to note, this Darcy is not currently in play yet.
Maybe you couldn't take him off Delirium just yet because Bolonic just took that damage.
All right. Well, it's a little late to
now
be looking at the graveyard, huh?
So I see 3 sorceries, 2 lands, 2...
No, 3 lands, 3 sorceries.
Oh, so there was no Delirium to begin with.
2 instants? Oh, so it's just an attack for 4 anyway.
So that was just an attack for 4. Okay.
Okay, so now it's going to...
So now it's just 3 lands, 3 sorceries in the graveyard.
Okay. Draw for turn. Snapcaster Mage. That could be a good start.
Only the 1 spell in the graveyard.
And only access to 1 red. So Snap Iteration needs some work.
But that is what Bolonic is going for.
Okay. Needs red source plus Unholy Heat, probably.
Potentially reading Ham here for another Terminate with how quickly he didn't, wasn't bothered by the 2 copies of Murktide.
Right.
That iteration should be exiled.
No, that was the cast one and he found Bobble.
No, he snapped it.
Oh, you're right. From the Snapcaster Mage, excuse me.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to Unholy Heat the Snapcaster Mage. We're going to Surveil.
Enchantment, so...
That is Delirium now. Let's make sure we get that Expressive Iteration exiled. Okay, cool. We got it.
That Unholy Heat was cast on the upkeep again for Ham, so that's why he drew the card afterwards. So again, good sequencing from Ham, and he is trying to get Delirium through this Hearse.
I would have just been everything probably, but maybe he just sees something perfect on top.
Well, if you can get the Shadow up to, I guess it has to be up to an 8/8.
Yeah, it's pretty hard off just fetch. You need like two fetches.
This bauble is going to be great. Now we've got a bunch of instants. We've got enchantment, artifact.
It might be enough. I know he has.
We can hit a creature. We need to hit a creature.
Okay. I think we have a second bauble in hand too.
A second bauble will do it too. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, second, because now there's going to be 2 artifacts and enchantment. There's a creature too. Okay. Yeah, so I think we've got Delirium through a Hearse activation.
Yeah, this is going to be this.
Yeah, can't attack with the Shadow because the Hearse is currently crewed. It's a creature, and it's not summoning 6, so you can block the 3 with your Shadow, then activate. Doesn't matter where you take the Hearse, will still be a 4/4.
Okay,
and that is bigger than the Shadow. But these 2 flyers are going to come in, and that's going to drop Bolonic to 4.
Yeah, and you can't turn off Delirium here.
Yeah. Ooh, taking sorceries.
I think he's sorting right now.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so we have the 2 baubles, the 2 creatures, 2 or 3, I think 4 sorceries. Yeah, and a ton of lands. So if he goes, there's a bauble in play, right? So if we have to take it, because if we ever eat bauble plus the breach, we just pop bauble in response, right? And then we still have Delirium.
Yeah, so this is still the easiest way to break it up, but that still leaves Delirium, and then next turn you can't take him off Delirium because there's 2 of everything else of 4 things and then 1 artifact. So you just can't get him down to 3 types with only 1 activation. So things looking pretty grim for Bolonic here. You're going to need to find some answers to these creatures on the battlefield, and you got to think like maybe kicking himself for not getting that second Murktide down. I'm not sure if Ham had an answer for it. That's a lightning bolt for one of the DRCs.
I found another bolt too, but without that red source, this is tough. Plays a Murktide. Let's see if Ham has that Terminate that we've thought he had all along. Now, Bolonic might have a Spell Snare in hand to protect. We'll have to see in just a moment.
And this is just a 4/4 Murktide Regent, which means even if Ham just finds a fetch land, the Death Shadow will be lethal, and you have to chump block that.
Okay. Draw from the bauble. Draw for turn. All right, taking a peek at the grave.
Fetch land here. Potentially a lightning bolt could do it. There's definitely a breach in Ham's hand.
Right.
We got shock land. Oh, there's a fetch. And there's a drown in the lock and an underworld breach.
I think Underworld Breach is... I can't imagine that the game's not over if Breach resolves, right?
Oh, yeah, there would have to be a spell snare for it to not resolve.
Yep. And then I'm pretty sure that the Hearse can't take him off delirium. Surveil happens.
I assume that we're going to take him off the bauble, though.
Yeah. And then everything else is in multiples, so...
But is there an unholy heat? Is there a bolt?
All right, that does look like a spell snare there. I think Ham actually has access to Drown in the Lock here,
Yeah.
but Gabriel might want to eat his own graveyard, but then I think he still just dies to what's in play, or is forced to chump block with a Murktide Regent, which is nightmarish.
And even if the drown resolves, Ham will still be tapped out.
Yeah.
So what is he going to do with it? There's only the one bauble. You can exile that.
Oh, maybe that was a spell Pierce. Excuse me.
Okay.
Because he just tapped 2 and paid 2, so...
Is there Pierce in the sideboard? Yeah, there are 2 spell pierces in Balonic sideboard.
All right, so eats DRC, eats Bobble, and now we attack. We have to chump the Death Shadow. I believe all the Bobbles are eaten, so
Yep.
this
now
Underworld
Balonic
Breach
at
is
1.
essentially done for.
So the DRC lethal regardless of... DRC lethal regardless of delirium status. There is another lightning bolt. But Ham had a pretty safe life total here of 7, so even 2 bolts would not do it. There's an iteration on top for Ham looking off the bauble. I don't know what Balonic can have to get out of this. That Death Shadow.
Well, if he had a second red source, he could go creature, crew, attack for 6, bolt you. But he's only got the 1 red.
Yeah.
If he had Murktide left still, he could accrue and attack. I think that Gabriel is out.
Yeah, I don't think there's any creatures left for Balonic. That would be the way to do it.
He has Subtlety.
And can't Subtlety plus Bolt because he's only on 4 mana.
Yeah.
Well, no, we can evoke.
If he has another blue card, he needs another blue card. I think it's just Bolt plus... All right, he's going to go for the Darcy. At 1 life, facing down a Death Shadow. Draws a card off Bobble.
Yeah, there's Subtlety. We drew a land. I don't know what the other card is, but if it was a blue card, we could have...
He did have the blue card because he had lethal.
Yeah, I think Balonic might have missed it.
Dang. Tough one. Dylan Ham takes it down 2-0 and is your first to advance to the top 4 here at the Season 2 Invitational. Here in Caldwell, Ohio at the Apex Gaming Invitational.